speak loudly and you speak loudly. I think that should be fine.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm Lucy Coleman. I was asked to say a few words to introduce Freda this evening. So 2020 Seder was unprecedented for all of us. And I don't suppose there was anybody sitting anywhere in the world at a Seder wondering why this night was different from all other nights. It was, for many people, very miserable. We sat, my husband and I, with our one child, just the three of us, wondering where the other 57 people were. We wore black tie to try and make it an occasion, and we did lots of things that we thought would make the evening more cheerful. I wrote a song. I was very proud of the fact that I managed to find a word that rhymed with neurosis, and it was that other well-known Jewish word, neurosis. And if we thought 2020 was bad, that was nothing compared to 2021, where we had made Aliyah, and we discovered then that we couldn't even have our son here because travel was banned. And so things were really going downhill. This year, I hardly even remember what Seder is about. I'm sure, like lots of other people, we're all sitting on shpilkas waiting for people to take PCR tests and see whether their flights are going to be cancelled, and hoping that this year will be more normal. And we need Freda to try to remind us what happens at a Seder. I first met Freda about 10 years ago, which is only surprising because we grew up about this far away from each other in northwest London, and we're approximately the same age, so you would have thought we'd known each other. We didn't. On the other hand, she knew my husband, who lived hundreds of miles away, and they've known each other from the time they were teenagers. And he was then a very naughty boy, and Freda was, by all accounts, a very feisty young lady. Roll on many decades, and Freda and her husband Dov came to London, and by then my husband was still a very naughty boy, and Freda was a Rebbitzen, an educator, a hospital clown, an all-round wonderful person. And she came to be a Rebbitzen in Norrisley in northwest London. And when she left, there was a gnashing of teeth like you've never heard in Hampstead Garden suburb, because no one wanted her to leave. So we're thrilled that she's here tonight with us. She's got the most amazing props here. Freda, please remind us what Seder's all about and tell us how to make it cheerful this year.
Thank you. I'm going to start by first of all saying a huge thank you to Shoshana, because there is always a person who makes these things happen, and this is Shoshana. And I want to say thank you for inviting me and welcoming me into your home. We for many years lived down the road. We lived in Seder for 15 years. My husband and I were he was the rabbi and I was the Rebbitzen, or whatever, the Rabbanit, whatever you want to call it, in Seder for many years ago. And we had very good friends who were the rabbi and Rabbanit here. So we often would come and see them, the Krugers. I don't know if any of you go back that long, but the Krugers were very close friends of ours. And we used to compare notes. So I've been in this shul many, many times. And I want to start by apologizing, because usually when I speak, I do not have notes. I don't like notes. I like looking at people. I like interacting with people. But first of all, I haven't done this workshop in quite a long time, so that's already an apology. But I really want to remember the things that I want to say to you tonight. So therefore, I will be looking a lot at notes, and for that, I'm apologizing, because that's not usually what I do. About 35 years ago, we've always had a lot of fun in our Sedarim. And about 35 years ago, I was talking to, at the time we were preparing to go down to Colombia, South America. I have a friend here from my community from Colombia, South America. We lived there many years ago as well. And we were talking to somebody, and I was talking about the things that we do at our Seder at the time. And the person said, what, you just don't read from the Haggadah? And I said, absolutely not. There is a lot going on in our house. And at the time, that wasn't necessarily what was happening around the globe. And there certainly wasn't Google or any way of social media of comparing notes or learning from each other. So people did what we've done from a Jewish perspective in many years. We took the traditions of the ones before us and they continued. So there are lots of traditions that I'm sure in your homes to this day were given down from generation to generation. But I think we now understands and appreciate, and we see what's going on, that there is so much more we can do. And we spend so much time. I've already done my first Osher ad shopping, a real experience, and just begun, which is very unusual for me. I'm really early this year. The fact I did it this week and not next week, like, it's really early for me. But I went and did it, and I realized we spend so much time taking care of the physical part of Pesach. What we're going to eat is a big part, the cleaning, that physical aspect of where we're going to, what the space is going to be looking like. But we don't take enough time to think about the spiritual part of it, where our soul is in all of this. And I want you to think for a minute of a memory from many, 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 many years ago. And you might not remember what was said at that given time. And I'm not even talking about just Pesach, anything that happens that suddenly brings a smile to your face. You might not remember the content, but what you probably will remember is what it looked, where you were, possibly the smell, possibly the feelings at the time, because that's what we remember. And the question is, how do we then ensure that we're passing this on from generation to generation? But I want to already start and put in parenthesis that this is not all about children. I appreciate that there are often starting where there are adults there and there are no children there. And I think it doesn't matter. Rav Kook talks about how we on Pesach, one of our obligations, and he says it's one of the most difficult obligations, is we have to try and connect to the child within us. We have to try and remember why we need to learn the story. And we have to tell it to ourselves. So even 2 years ago, that 2020 Seder, when people around the world were sitting by themselves, no rabbi said, you don't have to do Seder this night because there's nobody you're going to be passing on the story to. Because the story is primarily about us. It's how we connect. It's almost doing a check every so often where I am in my scale of things, what's happening to me. And what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to bring some practical ideas and all sorts of stuff, and there's stuff here on the table. There's loads of stuff at home that I didn't bring, and I'm going to bring that in as well because that's part of the fun. But I'm also hopefully going to bring some ideas of different discussions and things we can do. But we have to remember, Pesach is 7 days. This year, we're like the diaspora, we actually have 8 days. There is no reason to cram everything into Seder night. What happens at lunch the next day? What does it look like when you're sitting in a traffic jam during Chol HaMoed trying to go on a tziyul somewhere? We take things with us, and our discussions and things continue throughout the whole of Pesach, because it's absolutely impossible to cram. It's just the Haggadah itself, and with dinner and all, it's going to have the exact opposite effect. Because who wants to be in a place that is like, you can't breathe because there are so many different things coming from so many different directions. So the idea is to plan a week, not just a night. And that, I just want to place that there, because sometimes people say, well, how can I talk about this and how can I talk about that? And I said, well, 7 or 8 days to do it. Enjoy the time, enjoy the whole of Pesach. In our home, people get dressed for Purim and the house gets dressed for Pesach. And I want to start by a quote from Rabbi Sachs, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The message of Passover remains as powerful as ever. Freedom is won not on the battlefields, but in the classroom and in the home. Teach your children the history of freedom if you want them never to lose it. And I think the idea of what is freedom, and we're going to talk about Cherut along the way, and we're going to connect to that, is a big part of the piece, but it's not the only part of the piece. And what it means to each and every one of you, I was quickly to do a whip around, we would come up with a lot of associations of what does freedom mean, because to each and every one of us, it sometimes means something different. And when we're at different stages in life, it means something different as well. It's very dynamic. So I said in our house, the house dresses up for Pesach. Every year, we have a theme. The theme sometimes is connected to where the family is at or what's going on, or it could be connected to something that's happening in the world, or it could be an opportunity to zoom in on something in the Haggadah. It's very frustrating sometimes that you get to a part of the Haggadah that you really want to spend a long time about. The 4 sons, you can talk about the 4 sons all night, or the 10 plagues, or the Chol Dor Vador, every generation. There are so many things, but it's very difficult because you need to move on. There's always somebody looking at their watch saying, time to move on. So over the years, we've also chosen parts of the Haggadah to be the thing that we sort of bring a zoom in on. And that year, we will be paying more attention to it. So what does it mean to dress up the house? Well, literally, that's what it means. We start off by deciding on a theme, and I'm going to let you into our theme of this year. So this year, Baruch Hashem, a lot of the people in the house are finishing things. Our daughter, please God, is going to be finishing something to do with university. One of our sons has got quite a big achievement in the army. Another one's finishing high school. I've gone back to school and I'm finishing this year school. So there's lots of things that are happening new in our home. And I decided that we were going to revisit a topic that we did many years ago, and that's spring. What does Aviv, Chag Aviv really mean? And when I say dress up the house, so literally we have things happening on the ceiling and on the walls and whatever, but that's not where it stops. The idea is then we try and each person, according to who they are and what they are, will look into it in a different way. So one of our sons, who is maybe a little bit more into text-based, will try and look and find midrashim or commentaries or all sorts of things about what is spring. Another one who is a little bit more artistic might find spring in art. Another one might find it in poetry. But whatever it might be, all of us are busy with that topic for this year. And it will have a place at the Seder as well. I will find ways in the Haggadah to interject that. Over the years, some of the topics that we've done, so one of them, for instance, I looked at our table and I knew we were having lots and lots of different people from lots of different countries. So we did the ingathering of the exiles. And what we did was we drew out a template of a big doll, and we asked each person to dress it according to the country where they came from. We had them all around the room and all sorts of interesting things. And then we talked about, what does that really mean? We've done Am Segula, a chosen people, but Segol in Hebrew is purple. So everything was purple that year. We've done the burning bush. We've done the crossing of the sea. We've done almost anything and everything to try and, again, my house as of tomorrow is going to start being dressed up, so that the feeling is it's not just about the food and the cleaning, but we also need to be engaging in the different topics that are happening around. So that's just what we do, and it doesn't have to be like that, but it's a little way of starting. Excuse me, here we go with the glasses. Okay, I think one of the important things to think of as what I hope we're doing here this evening is thinking and triggering the creative juices in each person. There maybe is a game that the family love playing as a game, or there may be a topic that everybody knows that's a topic that's always discussed in our home, and we try and translate it and bring it to Pesach, bring that thing to Pesach. So hopefully, as I start talking about loads and loads of ideas, we'll say, oh my goodness, that works really well with that joke that everybody knows you always tell at the table. So that's where I'm trying to go to. We start off, there have been many years that we've had a question box that has been strategically placed near the front door. And once upon a time it was children, now it's grandchildren, but even adults. If you suddenly have a question about Pesach, and it could be to do with kashrus, or it could be to do with something in the story, and it could also be, I would usually plant open questions, like, how do you think Miriam felt when she sat watching her brother in the basket? So it's all different sorts of questions, and the questions go into the question box. The question box is there already a while beforehand, and that question box is a box that can go with us not only on Seder night and come out and, like, when the Seder's a little quiet or something's happening, so take out a question from the question box. But as I said, there were years when we knew we were going to be sitting for many hours in the car, so the question box would come with us, and that would be another way of engaging and continuing the idea of questions throughout Pesach. We for the last few years have been doing what a lot of people, I think more and more people are doing, and that is starting our Seder in the sitting room. We actually we've got like a gallery upstairs, so we put mattresses out and bean bags and very, very low tables, and that's where we start our Seder. So everybody is in a position that doesn't feel the constriction of sitting in a chair and how long am I going to be sitting in this chair for. And when we go to Shulchan Aruch, the laying of the table is already laid, and that's when we go to the table. But I'm going to be talking about lots of discussions that I think are appropriate for either older teens or possibly adults. And what do you do when there are younger children around that need your attention? So one of the things we've done over the years is we have turned our house into, anybody who's ever been to a nursery school knows that often there are corners. In Israeli ones, they always talk about the pinot, pinata buba, pinata, the different corners. I don't know how one room can have so many corners because there's usually lots of them, but free spirit. So we will have different corners with different things happening. So Lego over there, dress up over there, blocks over there, games over there. And any child who wants to leave the Seder table, that's fine, but they leave with a task. They don't just leave the table. So they have to go to the Lego thing and build Egypt. And they have to go to the dress up and they have to act out what it was like when they were standing at the sea. Whatever it might be, but this idea of feeling that you're leaving, but you're coming back. And that will enable everybody at the table to come together and feel together. Not everybody, I don't know whether at your Seder everybody knows everybody. We did the rabbinate for over 30 years, so our table was usually full of people that we didn't know and they didn't know each other. So the opportunity of thinking of how are we going to introduce people and how are we going to make people feel comfortable at our table. My kids would say, Emma, that does not make people feel comfortable if you've given them something to do, but that's just how I work. And people actually bit the bullet and did it. So usually there would be a question that they would get ahead of time, so they'd have an opportunity to think about it, and a lot to do with freedom. One year we asked people to bring objects, an object that they felt for them represented what is freedom for them. And it was remarkable to see when you have an array of different people at the table, what does freedom mean to you? We're discussing, we talk about freedom, that's, chirut, but what does that exactly mean? So that was an interesting thing that we did. Another year, we did a grab bag, which was full of lots and lots and lots of different objects. I'm sure any of you have ever been to Sheva Brachos or whatever, you've done this game, that they're in a bag that is full of lots and lots and lots of objects. But we take it one stage further. There's also a pile of words, and very odd words that don't necessarily have anything to do with the Pesach story whatsoever. So a person will not only take an object, they have to take an object and they have to take a word. And so it makes it a little bit more challenging, but then also a little bit more adventurous with the answers that we can get and that we get to hear. Things that we've done ahead of time as well is, for instance, one year we created a newspaper ahead of time, and we gave different people different things to do. So we had the news column and what was going on in Egypt at the time, and we had our correspondent who was telling us all the things. We had the gossip, because you should have seen what Miriam was wearing. We had the tour page, which talked about where you're going and what it looks like. We had the interior decorating, talking about what a pyramid looks like inside. So I'm saying it just was an opportunity to do something fun, and it was brought to the table, and a lot of people had fun with that. Another year, I found a cartoon of the story of Mitzrayim, and nowadays with Google it is so easy to find these things. So I found a few pages of a cartoon, and I typixed out what was written in the bubble, and I sent it to everybody, and I said, fill in what you can imagine they are saying. And of course you get lots and lots and lots of different things, some of it funny, some of it less so, but it was an opportunity for people to stop and think and come prepared with something else. We are a month before Pesach supposed to already be opening up our Haggadot and preparing for Pesach. Shabbat Haggadol is a really good opportunity to do that. But to look, nowadays there are so many Haggadot, and what happens is that sometimes you take your Haggadah, you're sitting at the Seder table, and you find something that's really interesting and you want to actually talk about it, but the Seder's already gone on because you're still reading that paragraph, which is very, very interesting. So take paper notes ahead of time, and not on the whole Haggadah, but if there are things that you definitely want to bring up or mention, have a little piece, a little paper clip there or something, and then it helps you remember that that's what you should be doing. I'd highly recommend as well, if there's something that you feel is really good in a Haggadah, then photocopy it ahead of time. So at one point, everybody is going to receive that piece of Haggadah, and you can really go into it and discuss it and be at the same place at the same time together as well. So it's another thing to do. The other option also is if there are pictures in your Haggadah that you feel are inspiring, amazing, you want others to see. So of course you can show it like this, but you can also ahead of time photocopy, and it feels like there's preparation going on when you do this. Dingbats. Everybody knows what dingbats are? Dingbats are, how do I explain dingbats? When you have a phrase that is represented by pictures, and you have to guess what the phrase is by the pictures. You cannot believe how many dingbats there are to now download online, and they're fun. It's like, so for instance, say the 4 suns, so there'd be a number 4, and then there'd be a picture of the sun. Okay, and you'd have to realize that meant the 4 suns. That's fine. That was like a bit silly and easy, but some of them are quite complex and quite difficult and it's another fun way of relating to certain words that you want everybody to be connected to and thinking about and everything. That's dingbats. For many, many, many years, I had a frog, a really lovely round frog that I made many, many, many years ago. And the frog basically would be telling the story from its perspective. So that the whole idea of understanding there are different perspectives to the story, and the way the frog is going to tell the story is not the same way as Moshe is going to tell the story, or the same way as Pharaoh is going to tell. And an opportunity to talk about what a perspective, what does that mean, looking at a story from so many different angles. So my frog died, very sad. It was very, very sad. So I found this on, I Googled this. I actually think that this is from a different story, not necessarily ours. But I've adopted her. And she now, this year, is going to be the one telling the story. So at different points, I might just bring her out. She's not going to be there the whole time, but at certain points, she might come out and tell her story. In our house, dress up is a big thing. I said the house dresses up, and I said the people dress up for him, but actually we all dress up on Pesach as well. And over the years, it's quite remarkable what you can get online now. But all the Pharaoh stuff, and I mean, there's just loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff. And what we've done over the years is, where's the picture? Oh, here's my frog. You can all see my frog. So Dov and I take it in turns being Pharaoh. The kids never know who's going to be Pharaoh that year. And they wait for it. And it's so silly because they know. And then we did a communal Seder, which was predominantly adults. There were hardly any children there. And we came out dressed up as Pharaoh and Moshe, and they loved it too. It's not just a children's thing. There was a whole thing going on. So we have lots and lots of dress ups. And over the years, as I said, we've had many different people coming to our Sedarim, and some feeling maybe a little less comfortable with dress up. So I have a whole box of just scarves. I mean, you can see that's what I have, but I have a whole lot of scarves. So I will give somebody and they'll just put a scarf around their head. But the idea again is to feel connected to something, to be creating something experiential that's happening there and hopefully will be remembered. One year I gave everybody burlap bags. Yes, like, I don't know how you say it. Like sack, thank you, sack, like sack bags. That was nothing, they were empty. And I said, just imagine you're leaving now. You're literally leaving now. What is it you want to take with? But then I twisted the question and I said, if you could leave something behind and not take it with, you have an opportunity to stop and say, that is the thing I don't want to take. Because we always talk about what we want to take. Everybody always talks about photo albums. They don't anymore because it's all on your phone and computer. But years ago, if you would have asked everybody, everybody would have said, I would take my photo albums. But I think it's also the question of what do I want to leave behind? And what does it mean being a free person? Maybe it's the liberty to change, to be that different person. And that's a part of the puzzle that we don't always talk about. So I think that, again, when leaving Mitzrayim, we're supposed to be leaving Mitzrayim behind. What does Mitzrayim mean? Mitzrayim for everybody is something else. What is your Egypt? And the Baal Shem Tov talks about it. Actually, the Arizal also brings it. But this idea that actually, not only every year we're supposed to be leaving Egypt, but every day we're supposed to be leaving Egypt. Because if I was to go around the room here and ask if there is anything that you might feel that you're slightly enslaved to, I'm sure that each one of us can find different things. And it's also at different times in our lives, we're going to be finding different things. And the different voices around the table are incredibly powerful of what exactly that means. And also just to ourselves, sometimes listening to ourselves and saying, hold on a second, oh my goodness, maybe I'm...
Can I ask an administrative question?
With pleasure.
There's so many things here, and I've forgotten most of what you've already said.
It's recorded.
Is there a note?
So I've got notes. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to understand them, but I do have a sheet that I prepared, and you're very with pleasure. It's a little bit. It's not greatly written because that's not my thing. But this is being recorded as well, so that. And as I said, not all of this is for every year, and it's not necessarily for every day. But these are different things that we can be looking at. I think it's really important to stop for a second and remember what is the first mitzvah. The first commandment that we were given as a Jewish people in Egypt. And it was Chodesh, Kiddush Chodesh. The first mitzvah, we're still in Mitzrayim. And Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe and Aaron about Kiddush Chodesh, about preparing, having a calendar. And what is he basically saying? That we have to understand and take responsibility for time. What does time management look like? It's a really good Pesach question. But what does that mean? What do I do with my time? How do I, if the word is Kiddush Chodesh, that's sanctifying the month. How do I sanctify something? Sanctifying meaning making something special. How do I make something feel special? And that leads me straight into Kiddush. Because we start with Kiddush. Now, I want to also remind you that the Seder is divided into 15 sets. We know that, Kadesh or Chad. And actually, I'm going to stop for a second and show you something here. One of the things that I find children who are the age of, say, 8, 9 are sometimes quite difficult because they can read, but not quite read fast enough. They're not little ones. They feel they can sit at the table, but they really can't. And it's trying to find that balance. So I will often give them a job. The one job could be that they get the whole list of all the different, the 15 parts of the Seder. So one way of doing it is actually a sign. Another way, I did it many years ago, is I have like a board, and there's a Velcro, and it goes on the Velcro, and each one, it comes in turn. But what I did one year was the kids who I wanted to do it, I had twin boys who are now both married and old and whatever. They're not mine, they were somebody else's who came to our Seder. And I pre-told them that their job is to do that. And I want them to open the Haggadah and see what's happening in each stage, so that not only are they going to put it on the board, they're actually going to announce what's happening. Because it's very nice, it's Kadesh or Chatz, Kapas, Yachas, whatever, we're hearing the words. But they actually had to say, okay, now we're going to, and they said exactly what they were going to do. And it kept them busy till the end of the Seder because they had responsibility. They felt they were connected to what was happening. Another way of keeping people connected, and this works with adults as well as kids. Many years ago, I can't find them anymore, but they used to be match boxes that were clean, like they had nothing on them. They were just like for arts and crafts. I can't get them anymore. So what I bought this year is little bags. What I bought this year is little bags. The idea is to go ahead of time through the Haggadah and try and find words that are only mentioned once in the Haggadah. There are even a word that's mentioned twice, it's fine. Put in each bag a word. Now, obviously, the younger person who you want to keep their attention going the longer will get a word that's towards the end of Seder. And the old grandpa who just has no patience will get Kadesh, like right at the beginning. And we'll finish with, we're done, and I'll tick, whatever. But everybody will get a word. And the idea of the word is basically, when it comes to your word, you're supposed to make sure that you know exactly where you are and shout it out. And it really is a great way of keeping people engaged. And I've done this with adults as well as with children, and especially people who didn't quite, like they had a basic Hebrew, they weren't quite sure whatever. They were so intent in looking for their word. They followed every single word of their Haggadah. So it's just a nice way of keeping people engaged and doing that. No, just do them. I also think that any game can be translated into a Pesach game. You know, there's the game Shem Code, code names, which we've done, Taboo, which we've done, bingo. I've got here a few examples of things. Again, it's not necessarily that we're going to be playing all of the things, but sometimes, especially like, say, the bit where you're going off to make the meal and getting organized and you want to keep everybody busy. So if you give them Taboo to do at the table, the people who are left at the table, or give them code names, it keeps people, it keeps the Seder going and doesn't stop the Seder. So just a little thing. Okay. Another opportunity, and again, it depends who you've got coming to the Seder, but if it's people that you feel that this will work well with, is you can pre-divide up the Haggadah. Each section divided, and you give to either an individual or a family or somebody that the responsibility for that part of it. So it means they could read it. If they maybe find a nice story that's connected to it, they could do it in rap, they could do it in blues, they could do whatever they want to. It's their part of the Haggadah for them to bring to the table. And it's a nice way of sometimes, and ensuring, like we have many times, people at our Seder who weren't affiliated to, I don't know what language to use, I was trying to be polite, but they weren't that religious. It wasn't something that they did possibly even on a yearly basis, the Seder. But I wanted them to feel included, that it wasn't something that we're just doing and they're not. So I'd give them a part that was easy to play with, and I'd explain, and I'd actually go through it ahead of time and make people feel part of what's going on as well. So the idea of dividing up the Haggadah is a nice way of, first of all, it takes off the responsibility of one person being the whole time having to do the things. And it's amazing what creative things, if you've got just a very small part that you have to take responsibility for, how much creativity you actually get and what's going on there. I mentioned the idea of, again, relating to family circumstances. I think it's really important when there's been either a birth in the family or sadly a death in the family that year, is finding how to put that into our Seder. And one way we do it, okay. I don't think the kids even know what this is anymore. An old phone. But I will often have a phone on the table. And I will say to, and I'll say to everybody that at any given time, you can pick it up and talk to somebody. And I did a workshop this week for somebody, and there was a woman there, and she said for many, many years, her mother passed away many years ago, and she's now a grandmother herself. And she said for many years, she's wanted to bring her mother's voice to the table, but she's never known how to do it. And she said, you know what? I'm going to put a phone on the table this year. And so she can't put a phone that's a real working phone, obviously. So it has to be something that looks like a toy phone or whatever. So you're not going down the look sort of thing and whatever. But having a phone on the table. And she said, I'm going to actually speak to my mum. And we had one year a lovely little grandchild who'd lost a grandfather, who picked it up and said, you know, you're not here, but we love you and we miss you. And of course, everybody was crying, but it gave an opportunity to bring somebody to the Seder who wasn't there. But it also can be used for other fun things. So for instance, you know, when there's been a bit of a quiet pause and thing, I could pick up and go, hello, oh, I can't really hear you. There seems to be lots of frogs in the background and you're stuttering. Could you talk more clearly, please? And I'd have a whole long conversation. The kids are screaming, going, Smash it. Just a fun thing that brings the story to life. It brings us back to a child who can't read the Haggadah has an opportunity, first of all, of possibly deciding who's going to be the one to read. So over the years, we've had, well, this is going to have funny connotations, but we've had a bottle, and it's been spin the bottle of whoever it reaches that, whoever it reaches, well, this is whoever smiled now got the joke. Okay, but it smiles. The bottle, and whoever it points to would be the next person to read, and it gives a young child who can't read an opportunity to feel part of what they're doing. I've done it with an arrow as well. The other thing is I've got a microphone, and the child will be going around and interviewing people possibly, or the person who's reading the Haggadah will be holding it, just to make it feel. Over the years, I had a television. It's no more like I had a box that looked like a TV. That doesn't mean anything anymore. I've done a computer once, just props. Another really special thing, and this is regardless of what ages people are at your Seder, try and see who's the oldest person sitting at your Seder table. And this week I actually had somebody whose mother is 98 years old and is going to be at her Seder. And I said, ask that person to try and remember the earliest Seder they can remember, and who was the oldest person sitting at that Seder. And the idea being is we are part of a chain, and we have an opportunity to connect. So through somebody who maybe is in their 70s, but remembers when they were 8, sitting at the table with somebody who was then 60, and start doing the maths of how many memories do we have sitting at our table? How long is the thing? I've done once a paper chain, you know, when you cut out the dolls holding hands, a paper chain of going back generations and generations and generations and sticking on when we a family tree, trying to put names on and everything, this idea of connecting to generations before. So this making it feel that we're not in a bubble. We're part of something that happened before, and Bezrat Hashem is going to continue happening after us. So it's really important, I think, to relate to things that are going on. And what, as Lucy said, talking about the Seder 2 years ago, about the Seder a year ago, about where we are now, where, please God, we're going to be next year. Like the aspirations and relating to things. Of course, what's happening now with refugees and this idea of having refugees at your table. What does that look like, and what's happening, and what does that mean to lose your home? And bringing the here and now to our Seder. So it's not just something that happened all those years ago, but it's an ongoing occurrence that we need to be relating to and seeing where we are on that. Okay. I mentioned the idea of Kiddush HaChodesh, of sanctifying the month. And we do start the Seder with Kadesh. And one of my favorite midrashim is in Tanchuma. And it's a midrash that I often use. Anybody here from House Garden Sabbath has probably heard me say it a few times, because it's a midrash that I love. And I think it's all about us understanding our relationship with things that are material. And actually, when you think of Kiddush, the question should be, tonight we're going to drink 4 cups of wine. A lot of wine, maybe grape juice, but we're drinking 4 cups of wine. Why wine? Why not? And why do we have wine in every single ceremony that we do, whether it's a life circle? It looks like there's a Brit Milah here tomorrow, so there'll be wine tomorrow morning. This little 8-day-old child is going to be drinking wine. And then the ongoing things. And of course, under a chuppah, we have wine. And when we think of the yearly cycle, when we think of Shabbat, we start, and a lot of homes finish Shabbat, finish Havdalah with wine. Why wine? So this midrash in Tanchuma is a midrash that I actually like bringing on Pesach as well, because I think it helps us understand why is wine so important. We're now going to be drinking 4 cups of wine at the table. We need to try and understand, what is this wine? So the midrash is Tanchuma. It's about Parashat Noach. Of course, that's the first time that we actually meet the vines, when Noach comes out of the ark and he plants a vine. And according to the midrash, it talks about how Satan came to Moshe and said, I'm really happy to help plant your vine. Noach said, I don't need anybody to help me. I can do it myself. Satan says, no, I'm going to help you. And he comes along and he brings some blood from a lamb and he sprinkles it over the plant. And Noach says, what are you doing? He says, just wait. Then he brings a little bit of blood. This is a midrash, right? It's not. He brings a little bit of blood and from a lion, and he puts it over the vine. Noach's getting really, really angry. The next animal is a monkey, and the final animal is a pig. He brings these 4 pieces of blood and spreads it on. And Noach says, what are you doing? And Satan turns to Noach and says, you people, you humans, you think you're so clever. You're going to start drinking wine, and at the beginning, you're going to be like lambs. You're going to be very sweet and yain yisamech lev enosh. It's nice. It's healthy. Some say it's healthy to have a glass of red wine every night. That's fine. But you don't stop. You have a bit more. And then you become like a lion. You think you can do anything and everything, but you don't stop there. Then you drink more and you become like a monkey, because you become stupid. You drank too much. And we've just finished Purim, where we had the whole thing of drunkenness and what does that mean? And there's a beautiful relationship between Purim and Pesach. I'm not going to go into all that now. And then finally, a person who doesn't know how to stop at all and is a drunkard is going to be rolling around on the floor. And the Tanchuma, the midrash is all about saying that everything is about moderation. That we are being given gifts in this world, incredible gifts that Kadosh Baruch Hu has given us. And we are not supposed to be Nazirim. We're not supposed to be the Nazir in English. I say Nazir? Oh, it is a Nazir. You're not supposed to be. We're not supposed to. We are supposed to partake of things in this world, but we're supposed to understand moderation. And the word kiddush means to sanctify, to make something special. So all the material blessings and wonderful things that we have in this world are there for us. But to be a free person means we have to have control over them and not them having control over us. So it's a way sometimes that when we're talking about freedom, we're talking about Kiddush and everything, it's a message that I think works well. As I said, we have the 15 stages, and I'm not going to go through them now, but there are beautiful, beautiful ideas that you can definitely Google, especially Hasidic ideas of what is happening on each stage to us as people. How do we become the free people that in the end are going to be singing the Shana B'Yerushalayim? So there's a way of taking those 15 steps and using them almost as a prototype for how we're supposed to be better people and what we're supposed to be doing. Okay. So Magid, speech. I think we don't talk enough about speech. And here we have everybody at the table with lots and lots of different voices. And we have an opportunity to talk about speech that helps people become better versions of themselves and speech that destroys. And Magid, the actions of what we're supposed to be doing at Leila Seder is telling the story. The words we choose to tell the story are going to be the words that are going to help the other person understand. So the Magid, the idea of what does that mean? And I think, again, if we're looking for different opportunities of conversations, then speech, what does speech do? Magid is an opportunity to stop just before we're about to begin and talk about the power of words. And there's some beautiful, obviously there's so much that we can do with that, but it's a very nice way also to stop and talk. Remember also that the Arizal talks about that Pesach is the mouth of speech, and Paro, it almost has it in Pe'ra, a bad thing. So there's all sorts of midrashim and Hasidic lessons and all sorts of things we can do with that. So okay, we've come to the Manishtana. Traditionally, like nowadays, it's obvious to all of us that it's the youngest person in the room who stands on a chair and says it, but actually that wasn't how the Manishtana was. The Manishtana was for the person who was leading the Seder to help the child. We know with the 4 sons, and we're going to come to that a bit later on, we have the child, the child who does not know how to ask the questions. So what are we supposed to do? Open for him, open the gates, open his heart, open his mouth, help him find the questions. So the Manishtana used to be done by the master of ceremonies. But now, as we know, it's become a very nice thing that kids do. And there's all sorts of games and things that we play with. I've got all sorts of puppets and all sorts of different things with the Manishtana. We've done it also when you've had lots of different children at the table all arguing because they want to be the one to say it. So as they get a bit older, I ask them to say it in a different way. So I mentioned before, rap or blues or country or whatever. So ahead of time, I say, give me a rap Manishtana. So the little one can be doing their little Manishtana, and it's very, very cute. And as they get older, if they want to still join in, they could be bringing it to the table in a much more fun way. But then we have an opportunity here to have a conversation about questions. What are questions? Why do we need questions? What is a good question? Have you ever asked a question that somebody really just dismissed, made you feel terrible? Have you ever been asked a question and after a while suddenly realized, I didn't give that person enough time? How do we ensure that people are curious? How do we lose that? As I said before about Rav Kook says we're supposed to be looking for the child in ourselves. We forget that curiosity. We forget to be excited. We forget to ask the question. What is a silly question? The silly questions are questions that nobody asks, because every question has a place. How do we deal with questions? And I just think that sometimes we just don't have the time for it. We're curt, we don't have the patience, whether it's with our spouses, with our children, with our parents, with our friends, with our neighbors. And I think it's a really important piece to stop for a minute and just think, what are questions? Why did the Chachamim decide that this is how the Magid is going to begin? And even with the 4 sons, it's all about the questions that they ask or don't ask. So we see that in Judaism, questions is a key part of what's going on, and we need to relate to that. We need to but then there's an opportunity to say for a second, hold on a second, if you were to add a question, looking around, okay, perfect. What question would you add? What question is not being said now that is really appropriate, either to our family, to what's happening now, to what's happening in the world, to what's happening at the Pesach table, that you can really find ways, triggers, to ensure that whoever it is asking more questions, and you come up with some amazing things, especially with the younger kids who come out with sometimes some brilliant answers of what is a question and what does that look like. I don't know if you remember. Do you all remember these? Yeah. Okay. So I got this. I mean, I downloaded this, but it's one of those things that you go backwards and forwards, and everybody has to choose and whatever. And here as well, this has inside questions. So theoretically, it's very easy to make. You can get the mold of how to do it, and you could do it to your family. In other words, the questions could be questions that are related to the thing, and everybody gets it on their plate, and they're pre-done and whatever, and it's just a fun, extra little something or other. Some have crackers at certain times of the year, and we have question things, question catchers they're called, I think. With the four sons. So with the four sons, we do lots of different. We've done over the years lots of different things, but I've taken the four sons as an opportunity to talk about body language. We often, if I was to say to somebody, be the wise or be the bad, they would often use you'd often use your face to show, whatever, whatever. And we talk about, if I put this on and I can't use my face, but I have to use my body, what would I be doing? How would I be enabling the other person to understand who I am? So we start off with the four sons. I say, okay, but if we need to have a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, we'd be asking the story in a different way, and then do something with yourself. But then we have a conversation of, hold on a second, when I walk into a room and what I just choose to do and how I choose to move, other people are seeing that, and that's, so obviously we've gone beyond Pesach, we've gone beyond the four sons, but we've used it as an opportunity to talk about body language and conveying messages. Another option is to have lots and lots of different hats. I've got loads more than this. And each person who's going to read, they have to decide, what would the wise son be wearing? What would the wicked son be wearing? What does that look like? And choose a hat and put it on and explain why. The four sons is a great opportunity to look at different people's Haggadot, especially if you've got somebody there who has a very, very old Haggadah or a Haggadah from a different country, because how different places perceive what is a Rasha and perceive what is a Chacham in different places is going to be different things. If you take a Haggadah that was from many, many years ago in a shtetl, and there was a drawing there to the Chalutzim who came to Israel, a Rasha and a Chacham would be very different. So looking at the different, looking around the table and having an opportunity of those that have drawings, nowadays you've got a Harry Potter one, and you've got this one, there's so many different options, but it's comparing, what does that mean? How does society decide who is Chacham? How does society decide who is a Rasha? Is it us deciding? Is it subjective? Is it objective? How do we decide criteria? Another good thing to conversation. The other thing is, if we were to take the four sons and talk about four different stages in our lives, at what stage in our lives are we wise? Are we wicked? Do we not know? Are we ones who don't ask? And parallel to each, some Chachamim, some of the commentators talk about that it's actually in each and every one of us, all four things. Another thing that Rabbi Riskin talks about often is the idea of the four sons representing the four generations. They had the Chacham who was in the shtetl and he kept the things, and then they came over to the new country, and the next one basically had to earn money and didn't really keep Shabbos and whatever because they had to survive. But then their child didn't really know what was going on, and then the next child had no idea what was going on, didn't even answer the questions, and then there's the fifth child who doesn't even come to Seder. So this idea of generations and responsibility to pass things on. If you were to add another child, I know nowadays, and I don't know how people feel here, but from a feministic perspective, daughters, what does that look like? The four sons, the four daughters, different conversations that can be had as well at the table. I'm leaving it up to you to decide what you do and don't bring to your table. Okay. Sorry. I have lots of these. And I will often, depending on certain years, but I will often have them around the table, and each one will have their own mirror. And when we come to the point, in every generation, a person has to see themselves as though they came out of Egypt. I invite everybody to pick up the mirror and to look into the mirror. And obviously the idea is the mirror is here, it's been used as a metaphor to looking into our lives. What does that mean? As I said before, we had the conversation before, what is Mitzrayim? What does that look like? This year I heard somebody mentioned a nice idea, an event. I'm not sure it's going to work or work in our house this year, but two people, one is the sculptor, the other is going to be the sculpture, and to sculpture the person as though they are enslaved. So in other words, if I had to decide what slavery meant for me today, what would the statue that I would create, what would it look like? And if it could say only one sentence, what would be the sentence it says? And then as the sculptor, if I could now turn that statue into freedom, what would that look like? And what would they say? And actually almost seeing the physical transformation. We did this group of women, this wasn't with children, we were like all my age, and everybody did it. And it's very powerful. The whole idea of actually trying to physically think, if you had to make somebody look like slavery from your perspective today, what does that look like? And what does freedom look like for you? So chayav adam lirot et atzmo, it's really looking into ourselves. And at that point, when we look in the mirror, sometimes people want to share and people don't want to share, and that's completely fine. But sometimes with the sharing, you get some really interesting perspectives of what exactly is going on. Okay. Sorry. Are you all still with me? Is everybody okay? Okay. The 10 plagues almost do themselves. And I'm sure in many houses, there are lots of different things. I've got a bag here of loads of things of over the years that I've collected, of all different puppets and things and throwing things and doing things. And I know nowadays lots of houses do it. I heard somebody was telling me that they have a perspex tube. The grandfather holds this long perspex tube and a bowl at the bottom, and he starts by pouring, and this is the thing, they've been doing it since forever. He pours water down, and then he pours a little bit of juice with it, and through the perspex tube, they actually see it go from clear to red as it goes down. So each family has its different traditions. I want to offer another perspective. If I said during the week we need to continue this, how great if one day for breakfast everybody got a 10-plate bucket. And what do I mean by that? They would get a little jar of, we call it jelly, you guys call it jello. I don't know what other jelly, yeah, okay. A little red jar of that. Then frogs, you could get chocolate frogs, or you could get a chocolate coin and you could stick a picture of a frog on it. Lice could be chocolate raisins. You go through the whole thing and you get your bucket of the 10 plagues. Chocolate pudding for darkness. I mean, the creativity is whatever, but everybody at breakfast table is going to find a bucket of the 10 plagues. And then a whole conversation of what does that mean? If we were to think of today, what would be 10 plagues that would be relevant to our lives? Because we know that the 10 plagues that Hashem chose were very relevant to Paro and the Nile. He saw himself as the god of the Nile. So therefore the idea of the water, the frogs, it was all relevant to the time. So what would the 10 plagues of today look like? If we think about whatever I mentioned it to somebody and somebody goes, that the internet goes out completely and there's no whatever, that would be the ultimate plague. What? But I'm just saying, what would be the 10 plagues? And try and even play with the parallel. What is the place of water? What is the place of cattle? What was it in their time to do with the body? And then try and think of a parallel, a modern parallel to it. So that's just an interesting way of bringing it till now and getting people with their creative juices going. I've got taboo and charades and all different things that you can do with the 10 plagues as well. But again, if you've done so much till now, then you might just want to go through the 10 plagues and not actually stop there, because you have to be feeling your crowd and knowing what's going on. The one thing, no matter what, we will not do. That was too negative. The one thing that we will definitely do at our Seder, positive, is Dayenu. Of course, we sing Dayenu like everybody else, but at the end of Dayenu, we go round in a circle. My kids cringe at this point, because we go round in a circle and everybody has to say their Dayenu for the last year. If only that had happened to me this year, that would be enough. And I want to tell you a story. Many years ago, we'd adopted a Holocaust survivor who literally had lost everything in the world. She was one of a very big family. She was one of 11. She then married somebody who was an only child. They did incredibly well here in Israel, but couldn't have children because she had gone through terrible things. Then he died, and she was left basically alone. And she was coming to us for Seder, and my kids said, you know, Ima, this year we cannot be doing our day. Erica's at the table. It is highly inappropriate that we're now going to be talking happy clappy of all the wonderful things happening. And Erica's sitting at the table. So do you know what, kids? Erica has gone through a lot in her life. I think she can manage the Kaplan's Dayenu. And so we sat around and I saw their faces and I said, you're just going to be third. So just to let them breathe. And we got to Erica and she said, if only being invited to your Seder and sitting at your table, Dayenu. And my kids learned a lesson for life, that even if you've gone through the worst things in the world, you can always look for something good. You can always find that little bit of something. And so Dayenu in our house is an absolute must. We've been doing it for many, many years. And so we've gone through them becoming, you know, finishing school and this and that and whatever. And as I said, this year for our family is a very special year. A lot of them are finishing a lot of things. And therefore, I presume a lot of that is going to come up during our Dayenu. How are we doing for time? Like, do we have to stop? Shoshana, I'm asking you. Is it okay? Can we do a bit more? You sure? I mean, we're halfway through Seder. No, I'm joking. But there is just a lot more, and I'm always happy to give my phone number and people can phone me and whatever, like really happy. Okay. Afikomen, I think in most people's houses, it does the fun things, but I just want to make an opportunity to pay attention sometimes that the little ones don't actually get to find it because the bigger ones have found it earlier. So many years ago, because we did communal Seders and we might have had 300 people, and that's a lot of children who need to look for Afikomen, we color coded. So if you were from age 2 to 5, you'd be looking for the yellow serviette. And if you were from 6 to, I don't remember what, 6 to 8, you'd be looking for the blue. And if you were anywhere between 50 and 90, you'd be looking for the green. Like we literally would have three things we were kids. So it won't be so much the Afikomen per se. We'd make sure that was around somewhere as well, so that we wouldn't actually get to eat the mitzvah from Afikomen. But there would be them hidden in strategic places, so nobody felt that they couldn't find their Afikomen. And then you have this child crying till the end of the stadium. They feel so upset that they didn't get the Afikomen. Another option, and again, this works all ages, is to ahead of time prepare clues, like a scavenger hunt, but connected to the story. So we did this one year. You know, I want you to take the 10. I've said number 10. I want you to take however many plagues and go to the left, and then I want you to go to the right, however many years the Jews were in the desert, and then I want you to climb the stairs, go to where the stars in Joseph's dream, whatever. And basically what we're doing is we're actually going through stage night in a really nice way, but we're doing it through clues, and at the end of it there's a gift or there's something waiting. One year our kids did a jammy on us and they did it to us. They pre-prepared it and we said, okay, you know, go find the Afikomen. We said, no, you guys this year, and they sent us off to find the Afikomen, and we did that as well. So there are some places actually where it is the kids hide and the parents have to find. So it depends on the thing, but it's an opportunity as well. Another interesting thing that I think that we do in our house when it comes to the Kos of Eliyahu Hanavi, the cup of Eliyahu, the cup of Eliyahu Hanavi represents redemption, Geula. That's what that cup is there. Eliyahu Hanavi is supposed to be the one coming to tell us all about Geula, the Beser Geula. So whose obligation is it to bring Geula? Whose obligation is it to bring revelation, if not each and every one of us? So how do we fill the Kos of Eliyahu Hanavi in our house? Each person from their cup pours a little bit into the Kos of Eliyahu Hanavi. And as they do it, I asked them to think of something nice they did in the last year to somebody else. So kids are very happy to say as much as they want. Adults a little bit more humble. So I said, it's fine. Humility is wonderful. You know, Moshe Aya Anav Mikol Adam. But find one thing that will inspire the children. Because if you don't use your voice, they're not going to learn. And we've done it also when we've almost been only adults at the table. And I said, humility is really, really good. So don't tell me the most incredible thing you did. Find something small and pour the wine. So as that cup fills up, it fills up with the masim tovim, with the good things that we have done, that the people around our table have done to try and bring the thing. I presume dressing up as Eliyahu Hanavi happens in quite a lot of homes. I've got a beard, I've got a this or whatever. But one year I said to my son, you know what? You can't just go and dress up as Eliyahu Hanavi. That's not fair. You have to go now and find for me commentaries, midrashim, stories, because I want you to walk in and be Eliyahu Hanavi. Not just the person with the beard and the white thing. I want you to walk in and I want you to tell us about your life. We're going to interview you. We're going to interview you. Eliyahu Hanavi came to our house and ask you all about the things. And it was a really incredible thing that actually he stopped and he learned and we all learned a lot because he found things about Eliyahu Hanavi that maybe we hadn't before as well. So just taking that and one step further. Another thing that's happened over the years more recently, and again, some people might say inappropriate, feminist, I don't know, and I'm going to just mention it. I'm putting it here, do with it as you see fit, is Miriam's cup. Miriam's cup is about the water. Miriam, we know, she brought the be'er, she had the well, when Miriam passed the well, left on Israel. And therefore the whole connection to water, we know that it starts obviously, we know the story of her little brother, and we go all the way through, and we have Miriam with water. And I think having the two cups next to each other, the cup of water and the cup of wine, wine representing redemption and our aspirations for the future, and water, the here and now, the blessings that are happening at this very, very moment, and the opportunity of bringing them two together. And again, an opportunity to bring Miriam to the table, maybe to bring Aaron to the table because he's not here so much, but at that point to bring them. So having a kosher Miriam on the table is something that I think is happening in more and more homes now as well. Okay. Very big table. You don't have to have everything on your table. This is something that I learned that I love. And again, it's sorry, okay, it's okay. And it's called the chair of aspiration. Kiseh haratzonot. Okay. Just now, we're going already to Bab Yerushalayim HaBnuya. You have a chair. And this chair is the chair of Ritzonot, the chair of the things, the wishes, the good wishes that we want. The chair cannot be empty for more than 10 seconds. Okay? Everybody has to get up and they can sit on this chair and talk of the one thing they want to happen this year. You know, I don't know, I want to finish school. I want to get my driving license, whatever. People start off at the beginning with things that are quite mundane. But with time, actually, when you start doing it, you start delving into it, some really amazing things happen. And you're allowed to go to the chair as many times as you want. So it could be one person go backwards and forwards, but you're not allowed to have the chair empty for more than 10 seconds. Once it's 10 seconds, then we're done. The chair has to go back to its place and we are done with our chair of aspirations. But the idea being, again, of what is Geula? What does that look like? The things that I want to happen. So you start, a lot of people start off with things and then they start talking about world peace and they talk about this and talk about all sorts of things. I want this, but it's a really nice, good feeling of lots of people coming together and thinking of lots of lovely things. Of course, all the songs and everything, and I presume in most homes, there's lots of different things that happen. I want to just stop and think about Achad Miyodea. So Achad Miyodea in our house, we have these. Basically, each one is a picture that many, many years ago, one of my sons did, of something that is related to the thing. I actually have 300 of this because we used to do it in the communal stages as well. So I actually have a lot of these. And you give the number 1 to obviously the youngest child who is very happy to pick it up the whole time. And you can give the number 13 to the person who really is not into this at all, but will have to do it at the end. And you can do it, I mean, however many people will get numbers. And of course, when the number is said, you go up and you go down, you go up and you go down. One year, I decided that wasn't enough for us. So I ordered literally a minute before Chag almost, helium balloons, according to how many people were going to be there. And Dov stood at the front door, making sure none of the kids saw me come in. I ran up to our bedroom, hid them in the bedroom, took a marker, and I wrote 1 to 13 on the balloons. The kids had no idea. We got to that point of the Seder, came down with the balloons. Everybody at the table got a balloon. And with a helium balloon, as you know, it goes up the whole time. So you have to hold it down. And only when it's your number, you have to hold on to it, because you're going to have to pick it up and go down. And at the very, very end, we let go of them, and the whole ceiling was covered with helium balloons. And the next day when we got up, it was just very lovely, except for the one child who had fallen asleep and hadn't been there and realized had missed some fun. So you have to take that into consideration. And so that's the numbers. I think that with the numbers, again, if we take through the whole of Pesach, there are so many things we can do with numbers, so many quizzes, so many, and we can play and put it into the song, do the song in lots of different languages. I mean, there's so many things that you can play around with that, but numbers is a really important part of Judaism. And so there are so many things that we can do with that. So that piece. And the last, I'm going to finish, Haggadah. So I was telling before Susan David that when our son, who is going to be 18 now, when he was a baby, my husband was very lovely and decided to surprise me and take me to Venice, him and me, because he was quite little at the time. And we went to Venice, and I was enthralled by the masks. I saw the masks and I just said, oh my goodness, we have to do something Jewish with these. Like I'm a bit obsessed with things have to be, like, we have to see how we can translate things and bring them to, like, use them. You know, if they're beautiful things in the world, we have to see how can we use them. So I created, these are our Haggadah masks, and everybody, I mean, they're all here, you're welcome to come and see. The only one we don't have is Kadosh Baruch Hu, because I decided that was just going a little bit too far, even for me. So we don't have Kadosh Baruch Hu, but I mean, Kadosh Baruch Hu is here. So we do that. And of course, as I'm sure in lots of houses, we do it with the noises, and we do it with the preps, and we do it with the things. And the masks they come out, as I said, I made them 18 years ago. And so they come out every year with my Pesach dishes, and the kids wait for them, and some of them already decided which one they're going to be wearing at the Seder night. And I think that's what Seder night's about. Whether we're old, whether we're young, no matter what age we are, we're doing what Rav Kook says, we're connecting to that voice within ourselves. We're looking to connect to the story, to be part of the chain, to ensure that others will be part of the chain, and to make it experiential, whatever that means for every single person. It can mean different things for different people, and it can mean that we sit at a table and we eat, but that we are going to talk about the things that the Haggadah is inviting us to talk about, and we're not just going to speed through it. So may everybody have a Chag Kasher v'Sameach. You're invited to come and see the things that are here.